Welcome back. Taiwan has issued an official thank you to President Biden after his latest comments on U.S. forces backing the United States ally against a potential invasion from China. The Taiwanese Foreign Ministry issuing a statement referencing the statement that Biden actually made on 60 Minutes, and here it is.
And Taiwan makes their own judgments about their independence. We are not moving, we're not encouraging their being independent. We're not, that's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
Now, the White House, of course, as you know, walked back that statement, telling CBS News later that the U.S. policy on Taiwan has not changed. Of course, this is, I think, the fourth time the White House has had to do this on this specific topic. Now, Taiwan, again, responding, saying the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China extends its sincere appreciation to President Biden for once again emphasizing the staunch and rock-solid U.S. commitment to security in Taiwan. Let's welcome in now Gordon Chang. He's with us. He's the author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War. Also with us, retired Air Force General Blaine Holt. Great to have you with us, General, as well.
Great to be here.
All right. I want to talk about the UN and, kind of the fallout from the meeting with President Xi and President Putin last week in Uzbekistan. But, Gordon, I want to start with this question. And if President Biden has done this, I think 4 times, is that 4 times, right, based on your account? Who is in charge of foreign policy, especially the one China policy and the strategic ambiguity at the White House, if somebody's walking back the president's statements not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 different times? It sounds more like chaotic ambiguity, not strategic.
It sounds like a White House in disarray. It's clear what President Biden wants to do, but we have unfortunately heard his subordinates contradict him. And that means, if you think January 6th is an insurgency, well, then what we have just witnessed in the White House for the 4th time is a constitutional coup. If President Biden's subordinates think he's not fit, then there's the 25th Amendment. Unfortunately, they are now at a point where we cannot be sure that he is exercising the full powers as commander-in-chief. So China sees this, Russia sees this, the world sees this, and they think that probably the United States is not able to oppose them. That's what makes this critical.
We are at a critical time, General, when we look at the situation in Ukraine and how that is affecting the long-term strategy of President Xi and his designs on Taiwan. Obviously, the problems in Ukraine and that strategic relationship with Russia causing a lot of heartburn for President Xi right now. But going back to President Biden, if he's not the one calling the shots on Taiwan, how can he back up anything that he says about Taiwan or about Russia or Ukraine from the podium at the UN General Assembly?
Yeah, or John, anything for that matter. So to Gordon's point, if the president wants to embark on a new policy or strategy change, an initiative, then his administration's got to back him up. And if they're not going to do that, then what does he talk about that we can take to be U.S. policy? And there's never been a more dangerous time than right now. And the reason for that is we showed extreme weakness in Kabul, and that's why that all happened, and that led to the Ukraine war. But now we're showing even more weakness on a global stage when we have an administration that's going at each other's throats, wrestling for a microphone to clarify what the policy actually is.
Yeah, and I think, a question who's it Jake Sullivan who's doing this? Who on the foreign policy team? Is it Tony Blinken? Who is the person actually making that decision that we have to clarify what the president said? Now, let's talk a little bit more, General. You mentioned this on our call this morning, which was fascinating to talk about. And Gordon, I want to get your perspective as well. Because the situation in Ukraine is going so poorly for Vladimir Putin, what options does that leave Russia right now in its relationship with China? Has that impacted Xi's future as the leader of the Communist Party in China? How much has it impacted his designs on Taiwan? And how much has it impacted the relationship with Vladimir Putin? Gordon, first to you, and then we'll go to the General.
I think that what this does is potential risk for Xi Jinping, because he has been responsible for the full-throated support of Russia. We heard this when the 3rd-ranking Chinese leader went to the State Duma a couple of weeks ago, and also when Xi Jinping was in Uzbekistan meeting Putin. Xi Jinping supported Russia's quote-unquote core interests, which is core for Ukraine. Now, if Russia does something like use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, this really makes it very difficult for China's leader. But on the other hand, if Putin breaks the taboo of using tactical nukes, We then got to be concerned that China would threaten or use tactical nukes on Taiwan, because we know that since last July, China has actually been threatening to use their nukes against Japan and Australia and the United States.
That's obviously game over, and then we're in basically World War III there. But General, talk to us about what you mentioned earlier today about Xi maybe providing a check on Putin and his. Give us some insight on what that conversation maybe went like, if the conversation of using nuclear weapons actually came up last week in Uzbekistan.
Yep. So in Uzbekistan, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, this meeting was so impactful, especially for Russia. Xi Jinping, with his economy and where they're sitting right now internally, he's up against the ropes, and he's got his conference coming next month. And you notice that India and China both pressured Putin to get this thing wrapped up. What happened? We have the effect. The effect is this sham referendums that are going to be in 4 districts, lock in territorial gains, start to wind down the war, but threaten the West with extreme weapons if they embark on any type of attack against the newly declared. At the same time, I'm going to bet you, and it's speculative, that all those SCO nations resolved to recognize that those new territories are in fact Russian Federation territory. And that's how Putin gets out of this.
Gordon, what do you think about that prospect?
I do think the general is right that, this is the most dangerous point in our lives. People may say, well, the Cuban Missile Crisis of '62 or Checkpoint Charlie crisis of the preceding year. But we now know from the archives that neither Kennedy nor Khrushchev were willing to use their most destructive weapons. We certainly don't know that about Putin or Xi Jinping. So we are on the eve of, I believe, a very difficult period for us, and perhaps one where we will see history's next great conflict. So the general is right.
And again, not just the nuclear weapons, too. We could also see an electromagnetic pulse device used in Ukraine, which would also be kind of tantamount to nuclear warfare. Doesn't seem like there's an easy way out, gentlemen. And tough to follow that up with a kind of peppy response. I'm not going to even try. But great to get your insight, General Holt and Gordon Chang. Keep us abreast of anything that develops, and we appreciate your time. Again, gentlemen, thank you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Another breaking story we're watching.